Welcome, everyone, to Introduction to Pipelines. I'm Daniel Callahan. I'll be your session host today. Come say hi in the chat or the Q&A. Let me know if you can hear me and see me. That would be awesome. And we'll get started with Intro to Pipelines shortly. We'll give folks a couple minutes or a few minutes to get in here. Yeah, let me know where you're joining in from today. It looks like a few folks have said hi. Oh, awesome! Thanks for the confirmation that you can hear and see me. I'm out in Portland, Oregon, so maybe some folks are nearby here in the Pacific Northwest. If not, hopefully folks are around the country and around the globe. Would love to know where everyone's joining in from today. We'll get started at 50 after, so 4 minutes. So if you were scrambling to get here, no rush, grab your drink at ease. Oh, Terry, awesome. Terry is from Portland as well. So we've got another person from Oregon. Oh, wow. And I actually, somebody said greetings from Poland, and I misread that as Portland. And I was going to say, that's crazy, 3 people from Portland. But welcome from Poland. Thanks for joining in Empower today. We've got California, Kentucky, Texas joining in. So definitely spread across pretty well. I don't think I see any East Coasters yet.
Somebody said they're from Boston. Got that.
Did I miss Boston? I'm sorry if I missed Boston.
Well, there's the Q&A and the chat, and we've got a mixture of responses in the Q&A and in the chat.
Well, that's what I missed then. Let me...
Oh, and Worcester, my hometown.
Nice. Oh, a few folks from Massachusetts, I see. So again, we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Debbie's coming in from Olympia. Awesome. Welcome from Washington. Looks like we have Eric from Vancouver. So just across the Columbia. And yeah, I definitely missed a lot of chat. I was just looking at the Q&A. So yeah, we've got folks from all over at this point. Toronto, I missed. Australia, awesome, welcome. I'm guessing it's late over there. Nice cat condo. Yep, I have a cat. She'll probably roam in here at some point, and hopefully not say hello for too long. She likes to meow sometimes. Spain, welcome in from Spain. So this is definitely a global event where we'll be learning about pipelines together. So this is awesome. South Africa, Czech Republic, never ending. Oh, 2:45 out in Australia. So late or early, depending on your schedule or sleep cycle out there. Hello from the Netherlands. Is that 2 South Africas? Yes, awesome, cool. Yeah, so this is a global event. We've got folks from everywhere. This is really cool. We'll get started here in just a minute. As you can see on the slide here, Introduction to Pipelines. So if you stumbled in here and you've joined a session, or maybe you were looking for another session, this one is on pipelines. We'll be learning about pipelines from the ground up. And I'll do a little introduction of myself for folks who have come in the past couple of minutes. And we've got Benjamin Bidet is also from QuickBase is also on here. He'll be keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A, helping me out there. So thank you, Benjamin. And if anybody's taken, yeah, awesome. If anybody's taken QuickBase training at any point in the last couple-ish years, you'll know you'll know Benjamin as he's trained from fundamental to advanced topics here. So we're at 50 after about 5 minutes into this, so we'll go ahead and get started. It looks like a couple other folks said hello from Peru and Upper Michigan, so hello to you both and welcome. And we'll go ahead and get started with the session here. So first off, welcome to Empower. If this is your first Empower, I'm really excited for you as you're going to learn a lot about QuickBase pipelines here. I've got a couple other sessions with formulas, importing, exporting data, and custom data rules. And then outside of that, there's, I think, 70-ish other sessions that other folks from QuickBase and customers are hosting today. We've got some networking events, and then the keynote that most of y'all are probably coming from. And then folks returning to Empower, awesome. Welcome back. I don't know if this is your second or your sixth, I think, at this point. We've probably got some veterans out there that have been to all Empower. So welcome back, and I hope we've got a lot of new content for you to learn today in QuickBase. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm Daniel Callahan. I've been at QuickBase for roughly 6.5 years, and I've been a product trainer here for just over a year. Prior to that, I was actually a QuickBase developer internally, also known as a builder. And so any apps that we use to run the business, which was roughly 75, when I departed the team, I helped design, deploy, manage, decommission, everything in application lifecycle management. So hopefully I'll be able to share as much knowledge as I can in this session and other sessions with you. And then as a trainer, one of my favorite things is also learning. So as we build some pipelines today from scratch, I'm sure I'll be taught something. So, please share your thoughts and ideas, questions, anything in the chat and the Q&A, and we'll keep an eye on that. And then prior to being a builder, I had a couple other roles, started on care and then kind of went to an escalations role, liaison between our care team and our engineering team. Enough about me. Let's jump into the builder account. So all of you should have gotten an email that asked you to kind of pre-create a QuickBase builder account. So if you haven't done that, you'll want to head over to this URL in the slide. And I'll go ahead and type it in the chat so you can just copy paste it. Or you can just Google QuickBase Builder Program. The reason we ask you to open a builder account here is so that you're able to create apps, as not everyone in their corporate account can create apps from scratch, and we'll be grabbing one from the Exchange for the workshop. And then also to be able to build pipelines, not everyone in their corporate account has those permissions. As a builder account, which is kind of your free personal account, and I'll be using mine today, you can create apps from scratch, download apps from the Exchange, and create pipelines. So you'll have full flexibility there. So head over to that link. If you have any issues getting a builder account up and running, go ahead and throw it in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll help you get that open. That way you'll be able to follow the workshop in its entirety here. Once you have your builder account open, please go ahead and sign into it. So if you're in your corporate account, head over to your builder account. Unless you know that you can create apps from scratch as well as create pipelines, you're safe to stay in your corporate account. But just to play it safe, I would head over to a builder account. From your builder account or corporate account, you're going to want to find a link to our QuickBase App Exchange. So from your My Apps page, if you're on your builder account, you'll have the left side experience. So you'll see a link to the Exchange at the bottom of the Learning and Help column. If you're on your corporate account, at the top of that Learning and Help column, you'll see a button that says Explore Sample Apps. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen as I'm going to grab this app with all of you. And it looks like there's an awesome comment in the chat saying, be careful, building apps gets addictive. Yes, that is 100% true. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And you may need to toggle between what I'm sharing and the deck. And it should pop up here for just a moment. And let me know in the chat if I need to zoom in at all, and I can do that. But you can see I'm in my Builder account. It says up here in the upper right, Builder account. And if I scroll to the bottom of my apps page, you'll see that I have the Exchange link here. So I'm going to click on that. And if I move forward in the slides, you're going to want to look for this app called Introduction to Pipelines. But if you just search Empower 2021, one app will pop up. And I'll throw this in the chat as well. And you can just search this string, and one app will pop up called Empower 2021 Introduction to Pipelines. Once you see that, you can go ahead and click Get This App. But we're going to rename it. So don't click Get This App and then download it. We're going to rename it, and I'll get to why we're going to rename it later in the workshop. So what I'm going to do, oh, am I signed into the wrong email address? Oh, I totally am. Let me sign out really quick. There we go. I'll jump back into the Exchange and grab that app. And what we're going to do when we rename it is actually truncate the name of it. And so, what, did I sign into the wrong account again? This is what happens when you have too many user accounts, by the way, is you sign into the wrong one over and over again. Let's see if this gets it going. Okay. Sorry about that. But what we're going to do when we download this app is, if I can find it, is just remove the Empower prefix. So it just says Introduction to Pipelines. That way the name of the app is shorter. And we'll see when we start building pipelines why having a shorter app or a longer app name can be a little bit of an issue. And so I'm just going to do Introduction to Pipelines and hit Create. Now that I'm signed into the right user account, I have my nifty little app here. I think Chrome is the recommended browser. The other major browsers should be pretty stable, but I haven't had any issues with Chrome, so definitely would lean towards that. And go ahead and just let me know in the chat if you'd like that you're all squared away with the app. And once we have the app, we can go ahead and backburner it. We're going to review what pipelines are and our learning goals and the agenda. And then when we get to the workshop portion of this session, we'll get back to the app that we're using. Awesome. Looks like it's a bunch of folks are good to go and ready. So because this is a hands-on workshop, we'll be creating pipelines from scratch. We do have some learning goals. The first one is just after this session to understand what pipelines are. The second one is to understand the capabilities of pipelines and what they can do. And so we'll be reviewing that together. And then the third one is understanding the concept of a triggered pipeline, as that's the first pipeline that we're going to create together. And then also understanding the concept of a scheduled pipeline, as that's the second type of pipeline we're going to create together. And we'll learn about the different types of triggers of a pipeline, or how to start a pipeline in a couple different ways. In order to achieve these 4 learning goals, we are going to focus on exercises in a workshop. But before we do that, we'll go ahead and jump into the agenda here. So we're going to put ourselves in the shoes of a builder. That way we're not just building pipelines to build pipelines. There's a story and a reason behind it. And so we'll review the story and use case. Then we're going to learn about pipelines very briefly. I know most people are excited to get to the workshop so we actually build some pipelines together. But I do want to teach you a little bit about what pipelines are and how they work. So we'll do that. Then we'll get to the workshop, and then we'll jump into a Q&A, which will be roughly 10-ish minutes, depending how the workshop goes. We've got a question on how to get the app again. So I'll show folks how to get the app again, and then we'll jump right into the story and use case. So if you're on your My Apps page, you'll click on the Exchange in the bottom right. If you're on your Builder account, you'll see an Exchange link down here. If you're on your corporate account, you'll see a button at the top that says Explore Sample Apps. Whatever experience you have, go ahead and click on the appropriate link. When you get to the Exchange, there's a search bar at the top, and you can just search Empower 2021 Introduction. You can click Enter or hit the magnifying glass to search, and then one app will pop up here, and it's the app that I've created for this workshop. You'll click Get This App, and then remove the prefix Empower 2021, so it just says Introduction to Pipelines. Then hit Create. Once that happens, you'll get redirected to the app's homepage. At that point, you're all caught up. You've got the app. You can back burner it. And then we're going to go ahead and put ourselves in the shoes of a builder so that we have some context on what we're solving for, why we're building these pipelines, and what they're going to do. Yep, you're welcome. You got it. So story and use case. We will be pretending that we are QuickBase developers or builder for a large corporation named Lavajar, and they're the leading manufacturer of airplane engines. So long Boeing. Well, I don't know if Boeing makes the engines, but if they did, Lavajar has entered the scene here. There's multiple teams across the org that are looking to automate tasks related to employee lifecycle management. So employee lifecycle management is basically the start, like the hiring or onboarding of an employee, all the way until their potential offboarding, and everything in between: promotions, position changes, reviews, anything like that is going to exist in this app that we're using. And once we get to the workshop, we'll do a little review on the app itself so we can orient ourselves with the tables and relationships. But just think of this as an app that's being used to track employees from beginning to end here. Currently, IT is using the app. So right now, when a new hire is onboarded, they're actually manually creating a checklist of items, and that's very cumbersome. And they're asking for us to automate that, and we're going to do that with pipelines. Secondly, our HR team is currently manually sending out a welcome email to new hires. They would like that to be automated, and they would like it to be scheduled. Every Sunday, they want us to find all of the new hires that are starting in the upcoming week, so Monday through Friday. And for all of those new hires, they want to go ahead and send out a welcome email on Sunday. That way, when they get to their desk on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, they have that email already. And HR is not having to manually do any of this every day or multiple times a day. Lastly, within the HR team, or within the HR department, we have the recruiting team. And what happens now when an employee is offboarded, they have to manually create a backfill record in their requisitions table. And they're letting us know that, hey, we have a checkbox when an employee is offboarded called backfill. If that's checked, we're saying we want that position to be backfilled, or we want that offboarded employee to be backfilled. we don't want to go manually create the record and fill in all the fields. Can you automate that for us? And so that's what we're going to do. So 2 teams or 2 departments, IT and HR, 3 teams using this app, and they're wanting us to go ahead and automate a few different tasks and processes for them. And we are going to be doing that with pipelines. So for folks who are new to pipelines, we'll just briefly review what they are. And it's a new feature in QuickBase that allows you to integrate data across multiple systems inside and outside of QuickBase. So it's not limited to just connecting apps. You can connect a bunch of different systems or platforms together, and you do that via channels. And we have about 35 channels that you can currently leverage. And so here's just kind of a handful of examples. And I have a link. Let me see if I can grab it for you all. That will bring you to the pipelines channels page. I'll throw that in the chat here shortly. But we can see right off the bat, we have QuickBase as a channel. Obviously, we know that you're going to want to connect your QuickBase apps together. And then there's external services, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Slack, Jira, a Google Suite, Outlook is on there, and a bunch of other ones. So let me see if I can grab that for everyone. Let me grab my handy little pipelines channel link and throw that in there. Yeah, and somebody's mentioning in the chat IFTTT, which is if this, then that, or if you've used Zapier or Workato, kind of any type of middleware connection systems, but it's all built into QuickBase, so you don't have to leave QuickBase to start creating these connections. And then lastly, as we discussed in the learning goals, pipelines can be triggered off of a record being created, a record being updated, a record being deleted, just like a notification does, or they can also be scheduled. And as I mentioned, with HR's email going out, or for them wanting it to go out every Sunday morning or Sunday evening, we can go ahead and schedule that. And so there are some scheduling cadences similar to subscriptions, where you can do, daily, weekly, monthly kind of thing. And the question is, another great question is, why do they exist? So we have a better understanding of what pipelines are and what they can do. But we also want to know why they exist. So for folks who have been using QuickBase for a little while, we've gone through different iterations of kind of integration features. So Sync, which allows you to bring in data from another source, but it's unidirectional. So you can bring data into QuickBase, but you can't push it back out. We've also come out with Actions in the past, which allows you to add records or edit related records. And it's pretty limited right there. And then Automations, which had a little bit more power behind them. And they were popular, but limited as well. So again, you're still siloed within QuickBase. So the major difference here with pipelines is you can start to connect your external systems. And as I mentioned, they're all siloed in QuickBase, which a big perk of pipelines here. In addition to being able to connect to external systems, pipelines offer more power, reliability, and insight. So power, because you're able to do more things than Sync, Actions, and Automations can. Reliability, they're built on a different platform. And then insight is you can actually see the job running. So when an automation ran, it just kind of ran behind the scenes. But when a pipeline runs, you can actually see, you'll get kind of a job report saying, hey, these steps ran, these are the values that pass through it. So if you're trying to do some troubleshooting, it'll show you, the record ID, the project name, a user field and their value. So you're able to get insight into not only what happened in QuickBase and your other systems, but any of the metadata that passed through there with date and timestamps as well. So you're able to see every step, and you're able to look into those steps. So if the pipeline stopped running or didn't do what you expected, you have a lot more intel into kind of troubleshooting. So let's get a little visual on what pipelines look like. This is a screenshot of a pipeline that will, I think this is one we're creating here, auto-populate tasks or something similar to this. But you can see here, this entire column on the left is the pipeline itself. So this is the workflow that you've created as a builder. Within the pipeline, there's going to be individual steps. And you can see these are marked with the letters A, B, and C. As your pipeline gets larger, more and more steps and corresponding letters will be added there. Think of these as kind of individual building blocks of the pipeline, starting with a trigger. Either you can see here in A, the trigger is the record being created. The trigger could also be a schedule, as we discussed. So each of these building blocks in here are considered steps. On the right, we have the list of channels. So I've truncated this screenshot so it all fits in here. Normally your pipeline will be a little bit wider. But in the link that I added earlier, it's a really cool link because it'll show you all the channels we have, and you can also drill down into each channel and it'll tell you the different types of actions that you can take. And so a channel is just a third party or built-in service that helps you configure your pipeline so that it can achieve what you're trying to build there.
Hey, Daniel, just a quick heads up. Right now we are looking at your default dashboard.
You're not seeing the slides?
We are. A few folks just wanted to get some clarity. I think they're expecting something on your screen, but we are still in the slides. Is that correct?
Yeah. The slides are just showing, if you can see the slides, you should be able to see what a pipeline looks like, and I've kind of broken down the different elements. Is that?
Yes, and I just wanted to call out for folks that
gotcha.
Slide deck should be on screen for you below your media player, so to speak, where you might notice that Daniel's screen is just still. If you don't see that, you can look for a menu in the upper right with the three lines signifying the menu, and you should be able to turn on the or off various elements of the lobby here, so to speak. So you may just need to look around to look for the slides. We're also on 24 as well.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I just stopped sharing my screen, so hopefully the slides will kind of default back to the main window here. Let me know if anybody would like for me to go back a slide or two that talks about what pipelines are or why they exist, and then I'll start sharing my screen again when we actually get into QuickBase to build the pipeline. So apologies and thanks for letting me know, Benjamin.
Oh, no problem. I think you're doing everything right. It's just we're all getting used to the way this all works and finding what we need on screen. So thanks for letting me jump in.
Yeah, of course. And if anybody wants me to review this slide because I was talking about things as they popped up and you didn't see it, just throw it in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to kind of talk about the three major elements here. And I've got 3 more sessions after this, so this is great feedback, so that I can let folks know that when we're sharing and showing slides, that there's a little toggle that can go between. So let me talk about this slide again, and then the next slide is the workshop. So for folks, we're almost there. And what I'll do is I'll actually just go back, so we start from scratch. Oops. There we go. So this is what the pipeline's UI will look like. I've truncated the screenshot so that everything fits on there a little bit better. It's just normally a little bit wider. But if we look at this left column, this is the actual pipeline. This is the workflow that you've defined as a user. Within each pipeline, there are individual steps, or think of those as building blocks, and they're all designated with a letter. So we can see here the trigger is letter A, and the trigger is record created. Then it goes to step B. So after a record is created, we're telling the pipeline to go search for some records. We've obviously outlined the app, the table, and probably a filter of that search. So we're not just getting, all the records from a table. We may just want to find some. And then after it's found these records, you can see there's a green for each. I would annotate and put a box around it, but it's right below B. It's a box that says for each. And what we're telling the pipeline to do is for each record that we just found, whether it be one record or 100 records, go do step C, which is to create a record. And you can see based off the name of this pipeline at the very top, it's called auto populate tasks. What we're doing here is we're probably going to find a subset of tasks for a project, and then we are copying those tasks or creating them and probably relating them to this new project that was created. So think of this as copy master detail record, the old functionality we had, but automated with pipelines here. And then the last part of the UI on the very right side are the channels. And these are those 35 to 40 channels that we have and that we're continuing to build out. And you can see those here again, I'll link it. And from here, you can drill down into each channel to better understand its features and what it can do. So if you know that you want to use Outlook as a channel, you can click into the Outlook channel and it'll tell you what you can do with mail, with events. If you're wanting to use Google, it'll tell you what you can do. Slack, the same way. You're only seeing the why do pipelines exist slide. Is that what other folks are seeing too? Or are people seeing this what do pipelines look like slide that has the different components of the pipelines built out? Okay, so Benjamin's seeing, okay, some folks are seeing what pipelines look like. Okay, it looks like we're good. There may be, I see why do pipelines, oh, so some folks are like a slide behind. It looks like most folks are seeing what do pipelines look like. Let me go back a slide and then forward. So bear with me. It won't matter too much because we're going into the workshop next. But for folks that didn't get to see this slide, I just went back to the what do pipelines look like. Oh, and try clicking on the slides icon. Looks like we've got some feedback in the chat. But this pipeline's what does it look like slide was just to kind of give you a little insight into the UI. We're going to be building 3 pipelines from scratch, and we'll get very used to the UI. So let's go ahead and just turn our attention to that. So let me start sharing my screen again. And we'll talk about these different components as we build the pipelines together. We'll talk about the trigger, the steps, the channels. So let me do my sharing again. And and what you want to do is if it doesn't automatically kind of become the default screen that you can see, is go ahead and toggle into my shared screen, which will be the default dashboard for the app that we downloaded. And I'll keep an eye on the chat here. So before we start building pipelines, there's a couple of things that we need to do. Is we're just going to get a kind of a lay of the land of this app. So we can see on our default dashboard, we've got a couple buttons to add some new records, a requisition, which in short is known as a rec or a new job opening. or potentially a backfill. There's different types of requisitions. There might be, opening up more headcount, backfilling an offboarded employee. We've got an add new employee button here because we're tracking our employees. As you can see this report, we've got about 20 to 25 employees. We've got employee history. So if we jump into this table, it actually might be blank. No, it doesn't. It's got some records in here. So what we do in here is we're tracking, and you can see there's a type. So if I add a new employee history, there's a type. And basically this is where we're able to track the life of an employee, the onboarding, promotions, manager changes, offboardings, so that when we look at an employee record, we can see when their hire date was, when they were promoted, when their manager changed, when they were offboarded, and everything in between. So if I open up this employee record here for Amanda, I can see her history is just onboarding. So we know that she's been hired, she was onboarded a couple months ago, and she's currently an active employee. This bottom section here is the checklist items. So if we go back to our exercises, the first one was IT wants us to automate the checklist of items for onboarding so that they don't have to manually come in here and add a bunch of checklist items. And they would have their own dashboard that has a list of all of the items that they need to do for the new hires coming in. And there's probably a checklist of items for when somebody is offboarded, to deprovision them, grab their computer and stuff like that. And so they would want us to automate that as well. So if we go to the checklist items table and we open up the reports and charts, we'll see we have a template employee report. And these are the 10 checklist items that IT does every time someone's onboarded. So we've created these with IT. We worked with them to create this list. It looks like there's a couple other items in here as well. We related these to a template employee. And what we are going to do in our pipeline is when a new employee is onboarded, we're going to find these 10 checklist items, we're going to copy them, and we're going to relate them to the new employee. That way, IT and the other teams don't need to come in here and manually add these, right? If you're adding 20 employees in a month, IT would have to come in here and create the 200 records, the 20 employees times 10 items per employee. Super cumbersome, takes a lot of time for them. It's something we can automate. So we've pre-created these items while working with them to get a comprehensive list. And so now we can use these in our pipeline to automate this. Oh yeah, so if your checklist items table is blank, that's okay because the table homepage is filtering out the template records. That way they don't accidentally get updated or anything. So if you click on reports and charts, you'll see a report called template employees. Once you open a template employee, once you open that, you'll see these template checklist items that we created. This should, following those steps of clicking on that report, should load up these 10 checklist items for you. So I'll make sure that in the chat that folks who are having issues seeing any records are now seeing some records. At this point, we have a good idea of what the app is used for. We've got our requisitions that are tied to onboarding. We have our employees that we're tracking. We have our employee history that shows all of the child records to an employee from onboarding to offboarding, everything in between. And then we have this table of checklist items. We're going to leverage in one of our pipelines to automate IT's onboarding list. And that's actually what we're going to do for the first pipeline. What we need to do first before we jump into the pipelines dashboard is we need to create a user token. And that's because when you start to create a pipeline and you choose QuickBase as your channel, we need to authenticate our user so that Pipelines knows what apps we have access to. If we don't authenticate our user to the QuickBase channel, then we're just not going to have any options to choose from. So what we'll do in the upper right is click our name, and we're going to click on My Preferences. Once that loads up, if you scroll down a bit, you'll see a link that says Manage User Tokens. Manage my user tokens for, and then whatever your realm or your builder account is named. Go ahead and click on that. Now, if you've used your builder account or your corporate account for pipelines, you will already have a user token, so you don't need to create a new one. I'll show you what you need to do if you already have a user token created. But if you're new to pipelines, like my account is here, you can click New User Token. Now, this is basically like your username and password. So when you create a user token, you don't want to show it to anyone. I'm going to, just for this workshop, because you're just going to see it when it gets created, but don't give anyone your user token. You're basically giving them your credentials. We're going to name it Pipelines because we're going to use this user token for pipelines. You can give it a description if you'd like pretty quickly here and just say this user token will be used to authenticate in pipelines. And then what you'll want to do is click into this drop-down field and find the name of the app that we downloaded from the Exchange. And what this is doing is authenticating or authorizing this app to be used with this user token. So once you find that app, check the box, and then you can click out of here. Yep, and I'll repeat these steps once I save my user token. And you can see the token is right here. What you'll want to do to get here is from your app, click your name in the upper right, click My Preferences, and thank you, Benjamin, for putting those steps in there. From the My Preferences, you'll see a Manage My User Tokens for whatever your realm name is. You click on that, you'll get pushed to another window. I already have a user token because I just created it. So the folks that had one already, what you can do is just click into that one and then add the introduction to Pipelines app to that user token. For the folks who are creating one from scratch, as you're following the repeated steps here, just click New User Token in the upper right. Throw in the name Pipelines. Just ignore the error here on my screen. I'll just call it Pipelines 2. Throw in a brief description and then find the name of the app that we downloaded from the Exchange. I named mine Introduction to Pipelines. This is just basically a multi-select text field. Choose that and then hit save. I'm not going to hit save because I already have one, so I'm just going to go back to my user token list so that when you hit save, we'll be looking at the same thing here. Now what you want to do is either keep this tab open or copy your user token to your clipboard, because when we jump into Pipelines and we authenticate, we're going to paste this user token. That way Pipelines knows who we are and which apps we've given this user token access to, which is just this one that we're using. If you're going to be using Pipelines to pass data between multiple apps, you're going to want to add all of those apps to this user token. And you just do that by searching the app, checking the box, and then this list here will continue to grow. So I'm going to leave this tab open because I'm going to come back here and grab my user token. From the My Preferences tab that I have open, I'm just going to click on the pipelines link in the upper left. So right next to the app name and right next to My Apps, sandwiched in between is pipelines. We have a training come up in June. If you get this pop-up, you can go ahead and just exit out of here. Gotcha. Yes. Okay. So we've got a comment in the chat saying, hey, you're getting a send verification email. Yeah. So if you just opened a Builder account today, you may need to verify it. So you can check in your email inbox for the verification email we sent, or click on that link so that it sends you a new one so that you'll get a new email that you can verify. If you don't have a pipelines tab, let me know if you're in a Builder account or in your corporate account. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, definitely lean towards a Builder account because all builders have permissions to create pipelines as this is your personal account. Whereas if you're logged into a corporate account, your account admin may have not given you permissions to create pipelines. So yeah, if you're in a corporate account, you're going to want to jump over to a Builder account just because your account admin hasn't given you permissions to create pipelines. Yeah, if you're in a corporate account and you have permissions, awesome. You can definitely hang tight here as you have permissions to do that. So just reading through the chat here to see if any other folks are having issues here. And I'm going to delete this pipeline on my screen just so that we're looking at the same thing. And here you'll see up in the bar in the upper right, there's also a link to the channels, which is what I linked earlier in the chat. I'm going to use the old UI just because I know that everyone has access to that. Some folks may have access to the beta, but I'm going to hang out here. And let's go ahead and create a pipeline. So we'll click the blue button that says create a pipeline. And I already may be authenticated with the QuickBase channel. So if I am, which I'm not, awesome, I would go ahead and de-authenticate. So it looks like some folks are asking some questions here. Have admin privileges? Should I be okay? Yeah, you should, but basically you can just confirm that from your My Apps page or your user token page by looking for this pipelines tab in your in your top bar up here. If you see that, that means you have access to create pipelines. If you don't, it means you're on a corporate account where your account admin hasn't given you those permissions, or you're on a Builder account, you may not have verified the account. For the folks who clicked Create New Pipeline, what we're going to do first off, before we even connect to QuickBase here on the right, is to name it. I don't do this every time, and I always kick myself because it's easy just to name it right off the bat. What we're going to do for this exercise 1 is automate IT's checklist of onboarding items. So we can just say here, automate checklist of onboarding items. And then go ahead and hit the check box to go ahead and name it. Now you can see up here your pipeline's named. You can always rename this at a different time. What we want to do now is connect to QuickBase. So this is where we're going to use the user token to authenticate. What you want to do here is put in your subdomain. So if we look at my URL here together, we can see it's danielcallahan.com .pipelines.quickbase.com. All you want to do is grab the string prior to the .pipelines. So yours might say builder account 7392. If you're in your corporate account, it may say, your company's name, .pipelines.quickbase.com. I'm just going to grab the prefix here and copy that and paste that into the box. If you have your user token tab open, go ahead and grab your user token and paste that into here. And I'm going to hang tight here before I hit connect to QuickBase. Keep an eye on the chat here. Yeah, so the library of apps in the Builder account is in the Exchange. So what you'll want to do from your My Apps page is on the very right side of the screen, there's a Learning and Help column, and there'll be a link that says Exchange in the bottom. To get this pop-up here, so if I hit cancel, what I did is from the Pipelines dashboard, I clicked create a pipeline. That brought me here. And then on the very right, there's this blue button when you open the QuickBase channel. So it's collapsed by default. If you uncollapse it, the blue button connect to QuickBase. And once you click on that, this pop-up comes up here. If Pipelines is still loading for you, try just a quick browser refresh. See if that gets it going. If that still gets you to kind of a loading screen, maybe just close out of that tab and then re-access Pipelines by clicking on the Pipelines tab again. You're not seeing connect to QuickBase. Maybe you've already created pipelines and you're already connected to QuickBase. If you're not seeing connect to QuickBase here, and you're seeing a bunch of actions like search record, add record, stuff like that, that means you're already connected. So you're probably a step ahead of us already. Yeah. So if you're seeing shows record attachments, that means you're connected. At some point, you already authenticated, or if you're on a corporate account, maybe you did it months ago, or when Pipelines came out a while back, and you've already taken care of that. So I'm going to click connect to QuickBase. The subdomain, if you look at your URL, is just the string after the HTTPS:/ and the .pipelines. So my account is, danielcallahan.quickbase.com. Yours may be builder-4927.pipelines.quickbase.com. So just grab this little realm string here and then paste that in the subdomain box. If previous pipelines have been deleted, that's okay. It should still be authenticated. What you need, we won't get into it, but you can kind of like unauthenticate the channel, but it takes a few steps. So you probably have not done that. If anything, you may have had pipelines that you deleted, but you still should be authenticated. If not, you'll just want to follow these steps. Once you have these two values in here, click connect to QuickBase. And now you'll see these new uncollapsible trees. And that means you've authenticated successfully. And now you can start to drag and drop these different actions into your pipeline on the left. So if I open up records, I can see all these different options. And as I was comparing automations and pipelines, I said that Pipelines has more power. And here's a great option here. Here's a kind of showing that with all these different options. What you can do with records, what you can do with file attachments, and what you can do with bulk record sets. We're going to focus on the first tree here, records. And what we're going to do is go ahead and click record created. Yeah, someone's asking about if this will go over scheduled time. What we'll probably do is just truncate this to 2 workshop examples. But I'll keep an eye on the time here. So let me go ahead and delete that and show that again. All I did was grab this record created trigger and drag and dropped it into my canvas here. Record created is a trigger because we want this checklist of items to be automatically created when an onboarding record is created for an employee. So Jim is onboarded at QuickBase. His onboarding record is created. That's going to trigger this. So here's our record created trigger here. The account is pipeline. So if you remember, we named our user token pipelines. That's why this is showing up here. You can connect to another account with another user token on another realm if you'd like. But we're going to keep it simple and just stick within this pipelines within our account here. Table, let's go ahead and click this drop down. And we truncated the name of the app because when it was longer, some of the table names got chunked off here. And we want to be able to see everything. That's why I had you delete the prefix. We're going to choose an employee history record. So this is showing us the 4 tables in our app. If we had added more apps to this user token, those apps and their tables would also appear in this dropdown. You can search, which is nice. But we're going to do employee history because that's the onboarding record there. It's created in that table. The next box we have here is where we define what fields we want to use from that table in subsequent steps. Because our pipeline is not going to end here on the trigger. We're going to take some actions. We're going to search for records. We're going to add records. There are some fields from this table that we kind of want to put in our pocket and use for later. And that's what we're grabbing here. So we are going to use the type. So let's grab type. And we don't need backfill because this is not for an offboarding. We don't need the date. I think we're good here with the type. We're going to skip advanced query. This is if you're used to using our APIs, you may be familiar with writing custom queries, but we're going to skip this and just keep it simple and add basically conditions or filters, just like in reports or notifications, right? We don't want this pipeline to trigger anytime an employee history record is created. We only want it to trigger when an onboarding record is created because that's what these checklist items are for. So let's click add conditions here. I don't know why that popped up. Let me try that again. There we go. And now you can see type on top of these built-in fields is available to use because we selected it in this earlier box as a field that we're going to use in subsequent steps or later on in the pipeline. So we're going to grab type. And type is not set because that would just mean it has a value here. We want to say type is, and from the drop down, choose onboarding. This is exactly like a report filter. Type is equal to onboarding. And now what we're saying is this pipeline will only trigger when an onboarding record is created because we don't want these onboarding steps to be created when an offboarding record is added or when an employee's manager changes. So now that we have our filter in place here, what we'll want to do is jump to the next step. So what we can do is scroll to the top of our trigger and click this little down arrow next to the trash can. so that we have collapsed the trigger. So it just takes less room on the canvas here. And now what we want to do is we want to come back over here to our QuickBase actions and grab search records. So it's the only green one with query next to it. We're going to drag this and drop it into step B, or it'll turn into step B. Let me just grab these really quick. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to go find those checklist items. And if you remember, it was in the checklist items table. That's where we were housing those templated records. So that's the table we're going to want to go search. And there are some, I apologize for that. There are some fields that we want to grab for later on. And so that's what we'll want to do here is go ahead and define these. So we are going to grab item name, item type, item owner, item description, and employee. So 5 total fields that we're going to use at a later time. And I'll hang tight here until you grab all 5 of those. So again, any field with the prefix of item, and then just the simple employee record there. Now what we'll want to do is go ahead and add a condition here as well. That's because we don't want to grab all of the checklist items in that table. We only want to grab the ones where the employee is equal to template employee. And what I would do here is probably go back to my app, find that employee record, and copy the value and paste it, just so we know that there's no errors. But I know that it's called template employee. And then we actually want to add another condition here. So we're going to click and we want to go ahead and grab item type. And we also want to say that that is onboarding. Because as we build this app out, we've probably created some templated offboarding checklist items. And those are also related to the template employee. So if we didn't have this second filter, when we executed this search, find all of the checklist items, onboarding and offboarding. And we don't want that. We want to isolate just the onboarding records here. And then we can go ahead and collapse this. And we'll take a little second here to talk about what we've done. We've created a, we've defined the trigger as record created when a new onboarding record is created. When that new onboarding record is created, we're going to go search the checklist items table, and we're going to find all of the onboarding checklist items that are related to that template employee. Because again, if we think about 2 months down the road when we've onboarded employees and we've created these items for them, we don't want to capture those when we do this search. We only want to grab those 10 specific ones, the 10 that are related to the template employee and are onboarding type. And we can see when we've done a search here, the pipeline automatically adds this for each kind of sub-step, because we have found one or more records. And so now we're getting to dictate what we do with those records that we've found. And what we want to do is head over here to our right side panel and grab create record action and drop it inside. Make sure that you're inside of the do step, inside of the for each. So your create record will want to be under do instead of at the bottom of your pipeline. Because what we're doing is we're telling pipelines to iterate on every record we find, whether that's 1 or 100. For each record we find here, I want to create a new record. We're going to find 10, so we're going to create 10 new records. So I'll go ahead and reopen the create record step C. We're still in the pipelines account, and we are going to create checklist records. So that's the table we want to go ahead and check here. And what this next step is asking us, where it says select fields to specify values, we're creating a record. And obviously when you create a record, you're going to want to fill in values in specific fields. And so this list here is fields that we're going to select so that we can fill them in. Otherwise, it would just be a blank record, which wouldn't be ideal. So we're going to click into this drop down, and we're going to go ahead and grab item description, item name, item owner, item type, and related employee history. Those are all of the 5 that we outlined in step B. Once you click those 5, if you click outside of the box, each of these fields will then have their corresponding box where we can fill in values. We can type in values with text. That's not going to help for related employee. We don't know the number off the top of our head. And we could type in the item name or the item type. Like, we know this is onboarding, and we could choose these manually. But a really cool thing about pipelines is you'll see this panel in the middle that we haven't really used yet. And in this panel, you have pills or fields, the previous steps. You can see right now we're clicked into B. If we open up A, we'll get a bunch of fields from step A, which is our record create our trigger. And what you can do is drag and drop these into these field boxes so that we're not manually putting in any values, or we're not choosing from a multiple choice drop down. We know that what we are doing is just recreating those checklist items. So what we want to do is take any values from those and stamp them into the new records we're creating. So what we actually want to do here is just drag and drop item name and just match that with item name in our new record. And now you'll see a little bit of markup language here. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's go ahead and match up all of our fields. So item name went to item name. If I scroll down inside of this middle pane, I can now see item type, item owner, and description. The last one we have here is related employee history. That is the reference field in the relationship between this checklist items table and the onboarding record. So rather than grabbing a pill from step B, what we actually want to do is open up A and grab the record ID and drag that in here. Record ID is the key field in the parent table. Related employee history is the reference field in the child. We want those to match. We already have that because this entire pipeline was triggered off of a parent record being created. And so we drag that in here, and now you'll see This is different than the others as it starts with A. This markup language here is called Jinja. We have a ton of resources on the language itself. And the A is just identifying what step it comes from, and the ID is the field. So if we look at record ID up over here in this middle panel, you can see, maybe I can zoom in a little bit more here. It's A.ID, so we can confirm. So you can type these manually if you start to familiarize yourself with the Jinja language. You can type them manually, and then you can confirm, what you typed here matches up exactly with up here. But it's easier to just drag and drop. That way you're not putting in any manual values. So let me go ahead and collapse step C. And let's talk about what this pipeline will do. When an onboarding record is created, we're going to go search the checklist items table for all of the template onboarding items. For each one we find, we're going to create a new record in that checklist items table, and we're going to relate that to the onboarding. That way, when we look at the employee or when IT jumps into the app and goes to their dashboard, they're going to see there's 10 new checklist items for them to take action on. So this is the pipeline. What you'll want to do in the upper right here is click on. This will go ahead and toggle the pipeline on. Otherwise, nothing will happen. You'll get a screen here. Basically, the pipeline is saying, hey, I'm queued, I'm ready to go. I'm just waiting for a trigger. So what we'll want to do is jump back into our app. I'm on my user tokens page, but in my app bar, I have my app. So I'm going to go ahead and click into that. If you're on your My Apps page, you'll see your app down here. I just have mine filtered, but you'll see Intro to Pipelines or Introduction to Pipelines. So I'm going to jump back into my app. And yes, this session is being recorded, so it'll be available afterwards as well. And we also do a training very similar to this every month, the next one being June 22nd. So you can come join that as well. We know our pipeline is triggered off of an employee history record being created. And so what I'm going to do is find the next employee in my report here who does not have a hire date, because that means they have not been onboarding. So I'm going to jump into Cyrus here. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add Employee History. And I'm going to choose onboarding because that was the filter that we created. And I'm just going to stamp, I'll put in tomorrow's date for the hire date. And then I'll go ahead and hit save and close. So just make sure that you have a onboarding type in here. And if you want to throw in a date, go for it. Before I save this, there's a question on how to trigger start the pipeline. Yep, so if I close out of here, I need to turn the pipeline on. So in the upper right from your pipeline screen, there's a little toggle, a little switch. And I just turn that on. When I do that, the pipeline kind of queued up screen pops up, and it's just waiting for a record to be created. So then I'll create this record. And then I'll head over to my pipeline, and now we can see the pipeline is running. And as it runs, this scroll bar gets larger and larger because more things are happening. And when I talked about Insight being a new key benefit of pipelines, this is what I'm referring to. We can see the record was created. We can see all the metadata about the record owner, my name, email address, user ID. You can even uncollapse the input here to see what table it was and how many fields were used. And you can kind of just scroll through all of this and get any data that you need. So if you're trying to troubleshoot something, you can see the exact point in time when this was created. Then as we go down, we'll get to our step B, which was searching for those 10 records. And you can see QuickBase has found 10 records, or the pipeline has found 10 records. And it shows in the output here, there's 10 objects, starting with object 0. And as I scroll through, you'll see the numbers go up, 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9, which is in total all 10 of the checklist items. So not only do we know that we found 10 records, we know which ones we found here. And we can tell by the item type or item owner. If you want, you could throw record ID into the pipeline so that that is output here into the object, so you can just confirm with record ID. And as we scroll through, we'll see all 10 of these. So I'll just scroll to the bottom as it's just every record being found. And then here's this parallel loop or this iteration on each record we found. So for each of those, we should have created a new record. And here's create record 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And you can see it's stamping the record ID, it's stamping the description. And so we're seeing not only that 10 records were created, but the actual values that we passed through, the name, the type, the owner, and all of them are related to employee 12 or employee history 12, which was the record ID of that new onboarding we created. We can go ahead and close out of this. You can always pop this back open at a later time. But if we go back to our app and we refresh our employee, we can now see these 10 items are here. Yours may have taken a moment to queue. It should happen pretty quickly. And then once the pipeline is complete, you'll see these 10 checklist items. Then what we would do for our IT team as a builder is throw a, pending or new checklist items report, or we'd send out notifications, whatever the workflow is, and let them know. So there's no more manual process here. Now, anytime one or several employees get onboarding records created, this pipeline will trigger and these child records will get created automatically. So a little bit of setup time, but my philosophy is always spend a little time now to save yourself a ton of time down the road, and that's exactly what Pipelines is doing here. So for the folks who saw their pipeline run, you can go ahead and, again, refresh the employee record that you added the onboarding for, and you'll see this embedded report down here. You could also go into the onboarding itself, and you can see the checklist items. So this is the parent. This is that onboarding employee history record we created, and here's the checklist items. We've got a bunch of questions coming in here. Yeah, thank you, Pavan, for answering the delay there. I'm gonna let the folks take care of the chat. I'm gonna jump to the next example. Is we're getting tight on time here. If I jump back into the deck, you guys, nobody has to jump back into the deck with me, but I'm just going to kind of level set us here. The second exercise that we're going to focus on is, oh, is it coming? Oh, here we go. Is scheduling the welcome email. So what we'll do is let's jump back into pipelines. If you're still in this pipeline, what you can do is just click on My Pipelines in the top of the Pipelines dashboard. And we're going to hit Create New Pipeline or Create a Pipeline. We don't need to re-authenticate. So if we open up the QuickBase channel, everything is here for us. That user token and subdomain authentication is a one-time thing. What we're going to do here is we're going to do search records. That is going to be our trigger for now. So go ahead and grab and drag and drop search records onto your canvas. And you'll notice, instead of having a pipeline on toggle button here, we have a schedule, and we can't quite click into it yet because we haven't set our trigger. But this is a second type of trigger you can have, which is a scheduled pipeline. And what we're saying here, although we haven't defined the schedule, is what we're saying here is when the schedule that we define hits, this is the first step we're going to take, which we're going to go search records. We are going to search the employees table. We're going to grab some fields here. So we're going to grab hire date. Oops. And we're going to grab send welcome email. So again, these are just fields that we're identifying that we want to use later on in the pipeline, whether it's the next step or 10 steps later. Yes, name that pipeline. Thank you so much. I'm telling you, it's not quite muscle memory yet, but I'm getting there. We'll just call this, maybe we want to do a little prefix here, scheduled pipeline. Every Sunday, send out HR's welcome email. There we go. Thank you, cowboy out there. And I'll review this search again. We're looking at the employees table. We're grabbing hire date and send welcome email. And we're going to go ahead and add some conditions here. And we want to grab hire date because this is the cadence for this is every Sunday. So we don't want to grab, or we don't want to find every employee record, right? We just want to find the employee records where their hire date is in the upcoming Monday through Friday. If we don't add this condition, we're going to be sending out a lot of emails to a lot of confused employees. So we're going to use hire date, but we're not going to do is set. That just means that there is a hire date, and every employee that's been onboarded has that. We need to filter this a little bit more. And so what we're going to say is between, and now we can define the Monday through Friday. And we're going to do a little bit of Jinja here. So Jinja is the language that we use in pipelines, and we're going to open it up with two curly brackets. And you can see as soon as I type those, let me zoom in a little bit more here. As soon as I typed in the opening curly brackets, it gave me matching closing ones. Similar to like when you use a function in formulas, if you type if open parenthesis, our formula builder will add that closing parenthesis. Then we're going to use time as we're looking for a date here. And we're going to do today. So maybe we'll schedule this on a Monday instead of a Sunday, but we're going to do time.today. Let me go ahead and paste this into the chat. And that's kind of the lower bound here. And now we need to define the upper bound, which is 5 days in the future. So we're going to do the same thing, time.today. But we don't want to close it quite yet. So I'm actually going to delete these. You can click into them if you'd like. And then we're going to add time.delta. And then we're going to define the delta, which is 5 days. And then I'm going to go ahead and close that with my two curly brackets. I'll paste that in here. What we've said is the lower bound is today, and the upper bound is 5 days in the future. So we've set these parameters or this window of time so that we are only finding employees that have a hire date between today and 5 days from now, which is just the upcoming week. I'll go ahead, I'll keep this open just in case we need to get back to it. But again, we've got that for each because we're probably going to find multiple employees. There may be weeks where there's none, so this record search will find nothing. The weeks where there's multiple, we're going to find those employees. And then what we're going to do is, instead of creating a record, we're going to update their record. We're going to update their employee record. So we're going to drag and drop the update record action into our for each do substep. We're going to add a field, and we're going to grab that send welcome email question mark. So it's a checkbox that we said in the trigger, I want to use this later. And all we're going to do is set it to yes. And as you all know, checkboxes are commonly used to send out notifications. So what we're going to do is find all of these new hires that are starting this week, update each of their records to check the box so that our notification goes out. What we could also do here is add another update step to uncheck the box in the case that they leave the company and then come back years later. Because if we don't uncheck the box, it'll stay checked. And then when they get rehired a couple years later, the box will already be checked and the email won't go out. So using some foresight here and thinking about all the different possibilities, we'd probably want to go ahead and drag and drop another update record and do the same thing. But instead of saying yes, we would just change this to no. So we're just checking it and unchecking it to quickly send out that notification. I'll go ahead and collapse this, and the first one's collapsed. And then what we can do is now, since we have a defined pipeline, we can go ahead and click schedule. And what we'll do here is choose the time zone that you're in. And I'm going to say once a week on every Monday at 6 a.m. That way it's before any employee has gotten in. Well, maybe we do 5 a.m. Definitely some early birds out there. And then schedule the pipeline. And you'll notice we also have this run button up here. This will test it out. If we test it out now, it's going to send it out to an email address that is kind of dummy data. So if we test it out, it's not really going to go to anyone. So what we can do is actually jump back over to our app and create a new employee record and create it for yourself. And throw in your email address. That way, when we test this out, it'll go ahead and send it to your email. And you can leave everything blank here. Just throw in your email address. That way we have that. And then we're going to go ahead and hit add employee history. That'll save our parent record. I'm going to add an onboarding record for myself. Oh, and that's blank because I didn't put in the name. And I'm going to put in a date of today and hit save. So I've added a new employee record for myself. And let me make sure the notification's turned on. And yeah, this session is ending pretty quickly here. So let me see if I can just try this out. Yep, looks like the welcome email's turned on. So now when I jump back to my pipeline and run it, we'll see if it finds anything. Oh, looks like I messed up on the Jinja there. So that's nice that QuickBase lets me know. So I'll go ahead and hit close and jump back into my search. And I think it's not happy with the delta being capitalized. Let me see if that gets it going. It might be the today's capitalized as well. Yeah, let me lowercase all of these. And Pavan or Benjamin, if you know if this should be capitalized or not, let me know. But still learning Jinja on my own here. We'll see if it's... Looks like it's happier. Nope. Let me try time.
I was thinking it's all lowercase, but I might be mistaken in that.
Yep, it is. So let me paste these again, all lowercase. I apologize for that. So it is case sensitive with the Jinja expressions. So it'll look like that for the upper bound. And it found 2 records because one we created earlier to test out the checklist. And then the second one we just created now, our own. And you can see it found these records and then the update down here. So it checked it to true, and here's the record ID. So if I hit close and check my email, hey, some people are reporting they got the email, so I'll cancel out of my Outlook. So awesome. Yeah, so this is a scheduled pipeline. I know we're tight on time, so sorry we couldn't get to the third exercise. We do offer this training similar to this every month, so if you do want to do this again and do the third exercise, please come join us. It's a live training we do. It looks like some folks got the email, which is awesome. I'll check my Outlook here in a bit. Yep, looks like a few other folks got the email. So this is your first kind of taste of the scheduled pipeline. It's really awesome. Some folks don't work off of records like the triggered pipeline does. Some folks work off of schedules. So maybe your accounts payable team has a close they do every month, and they want things to happen on a daily, weekly, or monthly cadence. You can leverage scheduled pipelines to do that, as opposed to waiting for a record to be added or created. We have a lot of folks out there that kind of say, well, I have a formula and that value is changing, but that doesn't trigger a record being updated or anything. Well, what you can do is a scheduled pipeline to go search for records that match this criteria you have, instead of waiting for a record to be updated or added. Once you find the records, like we do in our trigger here, then for each of those records, you can do all sorts of cool things. Deleting records, adding records, updating records, really anything you want. So you could say, hey, go find the records where that formula, the value is, this and this, or this between this, and then do things that way. So sorry we're short on time here. I think they're going to start pulling the plug on me if they haven't already. So I'll send out, or this recording you'll have available. It'll all be available for you. I can send out the deck as well if that helps you understand pipelines. And then if you want to join me or Benjamin again in a future pipelines training outside of this session, the next one is in June. So we do them every month. I hope this was valuable. I hope you learned a little bit about pipelines and getting a little taste as to what they can do and how powerful they are. I hope that they worked for you. I'm seeing a bunch of thank yous, and I got the email. So it's cool that you can schedule and then kind of test it out and everything. So yeah, I'll make sure that our event gets the deck handed out to everyone. So thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you in a couple other sessions that I have, and to have a great rest of your Empower out there.